Hello, everyone, and welcome to Your Daily Detroit, sharing what to know and where to go in Southeast Michigan. I am Jer Stays, and to my right on this Wednesday, September 25th, none other than the Prince of Brightmoor, Norris Howard. How are you?
I'm doing very well. How is everybody out there?
You know, I'm feeling really good with this Tiger Watch. I feel like every day as we do the show, we're going to keep an eye on those Tigers because I have not felt this good about the team since I was watching it back in the 80s on WDIV with the Roar. Remember the Roar animation, like the hand-drawn animation?
Yeah, with the 80s music, with the lasers and the... Yeah, man.
Oh, I get fired up for it. I'm just going to play it in the morning when I wake up as my alarm.
You should, man. And as of recording, they had just beat the Rays 2-1. That means 2 more games against the Rays and then the series against the White Sox. I think if they can get 2 out of 3 and then sweep the White Sox, we are firmly in the playoffs. And when is the last time we had postseason ball in the city of Detroit?
Completely unexpected as well.
Yeah.
And I am excited for it. I'm excited for the businesses downtown. I'm excited for everything that'll happen because, listen, this town shows out for Tiger baseball in a big way. And I remember seeing it years ago. Some of the younger listeners might not, and I feel terrible for you. I mean, I feel bad for all of us collectively as a fan base. It's been a long time.
Last time we were in the ALCS, I was part of the group of people that unveiled a giant American flag in the middle of center field.
Oh, that must have been fun.
It was super fun, but we couldn't stay and watch the game, so it sucked.
Really? They didn't even have a corner for you? Did you even look through the fence or whatever?
No, it just completely made me feel like a third-class citizen. It was just bad. It was all bad. So I'm hoping you rectify this, Detroit Tigers.
You showed up for America, but America did not show up for you. Who knew that'd be a precursor?
The Black experience.
Let's get into a couple of stories. We're going to talk about Stellantis a bit, and then we're going to get into a story that has been described as Detroit's Fire Festival. I don't know if it's that far.
But we got to talk about it.
But we got to talk about it. But first off, the serious news that the automaker behind Ram trucks is making big changes at its Sterling Heights assembly plant in Macomb County amid the transition to electrification. 191 workers will be laid off, including all 177 temporary employees and 14 full-time staff by the end of the week. This follows previous job cuts in April. Despite these reductions, Stellantis is investing $235 million to upgrade the plant for electric vehicles. The plant will soon manufacture the fully electric Ram 1500 REV and the extended range electric Ram Charger alongside the conventional gasoline-powered Ram 1500, as Sterling Heights will become the first U.S. plant to produce electric vehicles. The layoffs coincide with production changes, including the end of the Ram 1500 Classic pickup. We talked about this earlier at the nearby Warren truck plant. Stellantis CEO Carlos Tavares, and he is pretty embattled right now, previously highlighted quality control issues at Sterling Heights, noting excessive repairs needed before vehicle shipment to dealerships. There's also union strife with Stellantis, we have mentioned. Production of the Ram REV is set to start before the end of 2024. What say you, Norris?
Listen, this is a double-edged sword if you ever heard one. We have clamored for EVs on this show. We are big proponents of the electrification of vehicles on this show. Multiple hosts are. But at the end of the day, here's the situation. Stellantis is currently, as you said, embroiled, embattled, whatever you want to call it. It refuses to really build any identity out of itself. And they're in the sights of Sean Fain right now. He is pretty much already threatened strike action against Stellantis unless they reverse course on plant closures. These layoffs are not going to help that situation, not going to help that relationship, even though they may be because you just don't need as many people to build EVs as you do to build combustion engines. That's the cold calculus of it, unfortunately. But this will not help the situation at Stellantis as it stands with the UAW and really its image in the public eye.
I mean, that's just the facts. There's less parts, which means less suppliers, less people to work on them. And I mean, part of this, I guess, pro-EV stance, one, I've driven a number of them. I enjoy them. But two, it's where we're going. Like, I don't feel like there's no other options that are really on the table, and long-term, gas-powered isn't going to be it for a variety of reasons.
Yeah, and, you know, we're going to see this again, unfortunately.
It won't happen tomorrow.
It won't happen tomorrow, but we're going to see this happen again with GM, with Ford, and perhaps with Stellantis again. And That unfortunately is the hard truth of it, and it sucks. But hopefully what this does is it allows for other sort of levels of expertise, other cottage industries. That's the beautiful thing about it, is that we don't even know what the sort of secondary market or aftermarket for EVs becomes. We don't know what the battery disposal process will be like. So there's a whole level of industry around EVs that just hasn't been built yet, that maybe it will employ some of those people there. But as it stands right now, this will not be the last time we see cuts.
Yeah. So here's the thing. I feel like we need to work on our economic development strategy, so it's not just about the battery plants and the lower end of the chain. The trick here, and this is part of what you're seeing with the software job changes going out west, all that other stuff, is that we need to get a bit higher in the supply chain, because as long as we're at like this base level, and I know manufacturing is really popular, and I know that there's like a big role for manufacturing, but if it's at that very base level of the chain, we're going to be investing a lot of incentives in a lot of these plants and not getting the top paying jobs. They'll be in other states.
Yeah. When it comes to Detroit, you get the very beginning and the very end of the process, right? You get the very beginning when it comes to design and all that stuff. Like, a lot of that is still coming out of Detroit for the big three. And then you get the very end, which is putting it all together and shipping it off to the dealers. And that part in between, when we're talking about software development, chipset development, designing electrics, all that kind of stuff, is being outsourced to the coasts, California in particular. And that's going to continue to hurt the job market here in Metro Detroit.
All right, so imagine this, Norris. You're a diehard Bridgerton fan, dressed to the nines in your Regency era finest, ready for a night of elegance and romance at a theme ball at the Harmony Club in downtown Detroit. Beautiful building, by the way, beautiful building. But instead of stepping into the world of Lady Whistledown, you find yourself in what can only be described as a royal disappointment. That's exactly what allegedly happened to a group of fans who attended a Bridgerton-themed unofficial event that, for them, fell short of expectations. From reports of undercooked food to minimal decor, and even a surprising addition of a stripper pole, this ball is the talk of the town for all of the wrong reasons. Let's unpack this event that is apparently, from reports, gone pretty wrong.
Yeah, as we said, the Bridgerton Ball, here's the thing. And for those who don't quite understand what this is a series of events that Netflix has definitely put on as well. There's a Netflix sponsored event called the Bridgerton Experience that is taking place in Chicago and New York and Toronto and other towns. And apparently a events company by the name of Uncle and Me LLC wanted to put on their version of the Bridgerton Ball because the official one was not coming to the city of Detroit. Well, unfortunately, they fell very short. And people are really upset. And to be perfectly honest with you, when you look at the prices of some of the tickets, which vary between $100 and $250, people had the right to be disappointed. The pictures are out there on Reddit and other social media where there were very sort of cheap backdrops instead of the lavish decor that you saw from the official Netflix event.
And the shame is, this venue could have been that.
This venue
could have been. I remember this was the place where they did all the immersive Van Gogh stuff.
Yes, that's correct. You had the ability to be able to use this venue to its maximum potential. And unfortunately, they were unable to do that. And instead, you had local news out there. Channel 7 was out there. This is last night as of recording. And people were really upset. And there was something very stark and striking, seeing people in ball gowns in the middle of Detroit, furious and angry and crying and talking to, news reporters about how they felt scammed out of their money. It's really hard not to empathize with the folks who spent their money on this event. And I'm going to be honest, there may be some legal action for this event.
It's talked about a lot online. I feel like this, though, is part of this change in Detroit as far as expectations. Yes, as far as like the images I have seen, from my view, it seems like this event fell short. But I remember a time in Detroit where it wouldn't have, and I feel like this is a shift in things of expectations of with this city moving forward.
Yeah, and you know what? I love that you said that, Jer, because that's the positive spin on this, is that, you know what? We should expect the same level of quality of stuff as people in Chicago. We should expect the same quality and level of stuff as people in Austin and Houston and all of these other places. We should, because we deserve it. And for people to go out and spend their own money, sure, we could talk about the ticket prices. That's not talking about the money people spent on the ball gowns and the outfits and the nails and the hair and the travel and all the other accoutrement that went around this event. Absolutely, people expected to see and experience what they saw happen in other cities, and that didn't happen for them. And, you know, I just feel really bad. Like Jer said, I had people who were supposed to go to the original date. It was already canceled once, and so they couldn't go to this new date. And I will say this, though, I told her to maybe think twice after looking at who was putting it on, and that's no disrespect, but
there were flags, and let's talk about those flags. Let's be useful.
There were some red flags.
Talk about maybe some red flags with events and things. Because here's the deal with social media, influencers. I don't want to throw them all under the bus, but I saw a lot of posts, and there was a lot of stuff that was very full-throated in support of this thing. That it feels like, Yeah,
you know, one thing that I definitely want to say is that, you know, when we're looking at a landing page for an event, you know, kind of know what a boilerplate default landing page looks like. Did they put super amounts of effort into this? Did this look sponsored? Also, you want to go down to the bottom of the page. You want to find the title sponsors. You want to see, is this an official event? Are they getting support from additional entities, you know, sponsors, that kind of stuff? You want to see that. You know, if you're talking about an event of this scale where people are being charged hundreds of dollars, you want to see sponsors. Why? Because that lets us know that there was partners, because that lets us know that there was money to spend. Who's the caterer? Who's the events organizer? Have they organized other events in the past? These are all things that I think will help consumers in the future not get this feeling of disappointment and of losing out on their money for something that should have been a lot better than what it was.
If you are into the looks, though, Detroit showed out. I gotta say, Metro Detroit. Those people were beautiful, and it's a shame. Those people are beautiful out there.
We always do, and that is the real shame of it. Because listen, if you tell Detroiters to get dressed up, we getting dressed up.
That's what I mean, like the dresses, the suits, the hats.
I saw some waistcoats. I saw some sharp waistcoats.
Would you look good in a waistcoat?
I would.
All right.
I'm just putting it out there. I love me a 3-piece. The last thing I want to say on the Bridgerton Ball, everybody, is caveat emptor. Buyer beware, my friends. A little bit of extra research will help everyone, and it will help us keep people accountable. And I hope the organizers of this event are held accountable, because listen, you can't scam people. And if it was too big for you and you couldn't do it anymore, give people their money back, and at least they feel like you're a stand-up company.
Norris Howard, you went and got some audio for us.
Yeah, so last week, on the same day that Kamau and Oprah had their massive event, which we didn't get invited to, by the way. We were not cool enough to get invited to that.
No.
But the ACLU had a massive event down at the Garden Theater in Midtown. And I was able to get some audio, sit down with raconteur, journalist, documentarian W. Kamau Bell, and the executive director of the ACLU in Michigan, Lauren Kogali, talking to them about Michigan issues as well as the election nationally as a whole. So here's an excerpt from that conversation. I want to dive deep into a tough question off the bat.
Okay.
I want to just right off the bat.
Deep.
Southeast Michigan, one of the largest Arab American communities in the country, and Gaza and everything in the Middle East is at the top of mind for really hundreds of thousands of people in Southeast Michigan. Understanding that the ACLU is operating heavily in Michigan, and Kamau, would love your opinion on this as well. How are you trying to navigate those waters? Because it seems to be a major sticking point for, honestly, both candidates, but definitely more so for Harris, as she is seen as the option that that community will lean more towards traditionally?
Yeah, I think this is a really important question. And the ACLU, obviously, we don't endorse candidates. We're a nonpartisan organization. But what I will say is we think it is incredibly important to make sure that people have the information they need to cast educated votes. And one of the things we've seen sort of as we've been focusing on voter motivation work in Michigan, one of the first things we thought about was how disaffected people, many people who are Arab and Muslim, but let's be very clear, what is happening in Gaza and what is happening in Israel is resonating and impacting young voters in an incredibly profound way. And so I think sometimes when we look at the movement that Listen to Michigan started with respect to the uncommitted votes in the primary, many of those uncommitted votes did not come out of communities that were predominantly Arab and Muslim, right? That movement resonated with people across the state in a really important way. And I think that's an important thing to think about as we head into the election. People have to understand the power of their vote and make sure that they're showing up to vote on issues that they care about. And so, look, the top of the ticket is always the race that gets talked about the most. But the reality is that there are races up and down the ballot in Michigan that impact every day of our life, whether people can access healthcare, medical care, abortion, their own voting rights. And so making sure that races like the Michigan Supreme Court or school boards or library boards are being looked at as opportunities to really show your power and use your voice to impact your community is incredibly important.
Yeah. And Kamau, I definitely want your
agree.
opinion. Yeah, I don't want more of your opinion on this kind of in more detail. As somebody who is recorded and cataloged your travels across America and many places in terms of specifically talking about culture and what's important to people across the country. How do you see this playing out and sort of what's your take on it? I'm interested to hear why you think this has become such a strong movement this election cycle.
When you say this, why this? You're talking about the Gaza and
the uncommitted vote movement, particularly here in Michigan.
I think in many ways the uncommitted movement is a sign that people are paying more attention to voting than people realize. So this is not a movement of people who aren't paying attention. It's a movement of people who are paying 100% of attention to it 100% of the time, and therefore then it becomes the choice of the candidates to figure that out. When I was here, I was just reminded of this. I think I was in your sentence, but the last time I spent significant time in this area was when I was here with the United States of America, taping an episode about Dearborn and Hamtramck, and Trump had won a few days before. Obviously, that means a lot to a lot of people and feelings, specifically around Arabs and Muslim Americans. So, this community understands that they are a political football, and I think instead of reacting, there's members of the community who are now acting and saying hey, don't wait for afterwards to tell us what we did wrong. We're going to tell you what we need from you. So I think with the college protests on campus, it's a great sign that young people, as you mentioned, are paying attention. I live in California. California is not a battleground state. Breaking news. So I say to people all the time, look, the local elections, the statewide ballot issues, that stuff really needs your attention. And while you're in there, pick a president. You know what I mean? So for me, it's I'm not even trying to tell you who to vote for president. And I'm not trying to tell you who to vote for on these local elections, but that stuff needs your attention. And that stuff can transform your community. And the rest of it, while you're in there, do what you do. So I think it's really important. And I was a young person who didn't take voting seriously at some points and thought it doesn't matter. But it was really a misunderstanding of the power of your vote. Instead of just thinking about the top of the ticket, the entire ticket. And so now that I understand that, I really try to say to people, I get cynicism. I can't act like I wasn't that person at some point. First of all, I want to be clear, democracy is a full-time job. I think sometimes we put too much on one day a year. And I think people are now understanding, when you're seeing the activism before election day, and that is even connected to the election when people are just I want my issue to be heard, that democracy is a full-time job. And so, and one day you go into a booth or you fill out a form and you do it. But the rest of the year, there's still jobs of saving democracy that need to happen. And so I'm just really invested in letting people understand that this is not a one day a year thing. This is a full-time job. And then it becomes up to you to figure out how do you engage with that full-time job.
Yeah. And, I'm interested to sort of hear your perspective because on Daily Detroit, we talk Southeast Michigan, Metro Detroit. That's what we talk. We very rarely get to speak to folks who are very involved, but who are also coming from the outside. And so, as somebody who's from California, who's, California's sort of positioning is very entrenched, as you said, it's not a battleground state.
I would like us to be a country, but that's a whole other
That's a whole nother podcast. But how does Californians view sort of this area of the country, in terms of a battleground state? California hasn't been a battleground state in any of our lifetimes. And so coming from Michigan, that is very important. We actually kind of hold it as a source of pride that we are a battleground state. Across the country, is that something that people would be proud of?
Here's what I feel like my role is. Like when I came here and spent time here, I got to be on the ground with the people, got to be in restaurants, got to be in mosques, got to be like on the streets talking to people, interviewed a Muslim woman at a job. She got yelled at by people driving by in a truck like this. So I got to sort of be in the mix with people. That means that I get to go back to places like California or wherever I travel and go, I've seen these articles that say this is like a Sharia law area. I get to go, no. I was there. So that's what I feel like I get to do, that other people don't get to do because you just read about it. And you may read an article that says it and you go, I guess that's what it is. I feel like it's a tremendous privilege for me to be like, no, I was there. It's just, these Dearborn and Hamtramck are sleepy suburbs with amazing food, better than most other suburban areas in this country. So, and I live in the Bay Area, which is sort of like, also like hyper California in a way. It's not regular California. It's like super hyper California. So that like we are certainly thinking about places like Michigan because we have an Arab and Muslim community in the Bay Area. The people who I know understand that, like, again, at the top of the ticket, our California votes are just suggestion box votes. So if we want to actually and if we want to actually be involved, we have to pay attention to these other states.
Yeah. So Lauren, I want to toss this back to you. You mentioned something about the types of issues that are down ballot in this election cycle. A lot of people actually don't know about, or at least the average voter may not know about until they get into the voting booth. How can the ACLU and other organizations continue to sort of get the word out about these issues and continue to sort of help educate voters? Because most people couldn't tell you what's in the voting right there or what's in the...
I feel like this event tonight is a good example of that.
Yeah.
Like not just letting the ACLU be a website or a commercial that features a very good-looking comedian. I don't know why that laugh is so big, Lauren. I don't mean to interrupt, but the idea like this event, me coming here, the ACLU bringing me here, is a way to get people to having Danny Brown perform, is a way to get people through the door who might not come through the door for other reasons. Then they get to engage with the ACLU. So I think events like this are a great way for the ACLU to sort of spread the word of the good work. So I'm sorry.
I think that's a great point. Part of it is one of the things we're doing in Michigan is we have clerk engagement organizers across the state right now who are working in communities with people who care about democracy to ensure that all of these voting rights that we passed in 2022 are being implemented to their full extent that they can so that people can access the ballot as easily as possible. So they're out in communities talking to people about voting. And then the other thing is we are running communications all the time, a combination of digital ads, sort of public communications, so that folks understand that the Michigan Supreme Court, for instance, is on the ballot. And the potential way that they can interact with rights that we know people in Michigan care about because they showed up in 2022 en masse to make sure that we passed both a constitutional amendment to expand our voting rights and to protect reproductive freedom in the face of the U.S. Supreme Court overturning Roe versus Wade in the Dobbs decision.
I know you guys got to get ready to go record a podcast on stage and get the festivities going. So I just want to ask, where can people find more information about the ACLU? And Kamau, where can people find more information about
the ACLU have a website yet?
We do have a website.
I'm glad, finally, I've been pushing for years.
ACLUMICH.org is how you can find out more about the ACLU of Michigan. And ACLU.org is the ACLU, National ACLU.
And Kamau, where can we find more of your content?
I would say the best place to find my content now, I have a Substack called W. Kamau Bell Asks Who's With Me. So it's, I publish content there quite frequently. And it's free. Or you can toss me a couple bucks if you think it's got to be hard to raise 3 kids in California in the Bay Area, the highest housing prices in the country. Whatever you want to do.
Well, thank you all so much.
Norris Howard, always good to see you.
It's always good to be here.
It is a pleasure also to have all of you watching and listening your daily Detroit. As always, leave 5 stars on your favorite podcast app if you love us. Anything less than that, I might think to rip off Bomani Jones. You might be a hater.
You might be a hater.
I appreciate you. By the way, if you've never checked out the Bomani Jones, The Right Time podcast, it's a pretty good one.
He is one of my idols in the sports journalism game. Bomani always keeps it real.
Well, with that, I'm Jer Stays.
And I'm Norris Howard.
Remember that you are somebody, and we'll see you around Detroit.